Okay, if you're an iPhone user, there's a really good chance you're already feeling the hype for Apple's next massive software update. We are talking, of course, about iOS 17. Based on recent reporting from David Phelan over at Forbes, the timeline for this major software cycle is practically upon us. But as you probably know, getting the latest iOS isn't just a matter of waking up one morning and hitting update. Actually, it's a highly structured, meticulously staggered, multi-month process. So today, we're going to break down that exact roadmap so you know exactly when and how you can get your hands on it.
So let's just dive right into the burning question everyone always has: when can you actually download the new software? Well, the answer depends entirely on your risk tolerance and whether you're a developer or just an everyday user. See, Apple enforces a strict, staggered rollout schedule specifically designed for different types of users. And they do this for a very good reason: to ensure that by the time the software reaches the masses, the absolute biggest, phone-breaking bugs have already been ironed out by the early testers. Let's look at how this whole thing builds over the summer and into the fall. We basically have a dual-track journey happening here. The entire process kicks off on June 8th with the WWDC reveal. From there, the path splits. In June, our test pilot developers get their hands on the software. Then, rolling into July, the brave everyday users get their turn with the public beta. And finally, everything converges in September, specifically around September 14th, for the polished general release.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the big reveal on June 8th, 2026.
What is genuinely wild here is just the sheer scale of what Apple drops all at once. The annual Worldwide Developers Conference, or WWDC, kicks off on Monday, June 8th. The keynote starts bright and early at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Now, obviously, this is where they'll officially unveil iOS 27, but they aren't stopping there. No way! They're also going to be revealing updates for the iPad, Mac, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and the Vision Pro. This keynote is entirely designed to give us those deep dive feature previews to really whet everyone's appetite for what's coming to their devices later in the year.
Moving right along to Section 2, the developer track in June 2026. Okay, so the crucial detail here is just how fast this first beta drops. Forbes points out that the very first usable version of iOS 27 will be restricted entirely to registered developers. And guys, they do not have to wait long. This build drops almost immediately after the WWDC keynote wraps up. We're talking possibly on the exact same day, before the event is even fully over, or at the very latest by Tuesday, June 10th. This incredibly fast turnaround is absolutely essential so developers can immediately start updating their own apps to work seamlessly with the new software.
And this brilliantly illustrates why Apple separates these tracks in the first place. Look at the developer beta in June. It is restricted and, frankly, it's going to be highly buggy. Think of it like an active construction zone. It is meant strictly for building and testing apps. On the flip side, the public beta, which opens up in July, is available to the general public. By then, it's had a full month of developers finding the most critical flaws, making it slightly more stable. But, as we're about to see, it definitely still carries some major risks for daily use.
Which brings us to Section 3, the general user track in July 2026.
Now, I gotta give you a massive warning here. When that first public beta drops, it is so incredibly tempting to just download it immediately and play with all the shiny new iOS 27 features. But listen, early beta software is notoriously buggy. It can completely drain your battery, crash your most essential apps, or even cause your whole phone to freeze up. The universal advice from tech experts is that it is best not to put this early software on your primary iPhone, the one you actually rely on every single day. Just don't do it.
Now, if you're wondering exactly when in July you can actually take that risk, the magic numbers here are 3 and 4. The public beta typically goes live at the exact same time that Apple releases the third developer beta to their dev track, and that usually lands right around the middle of July. However, this isn't set in stone. Last year, Apple actually waited until the fourth developer beta before they finally opened the doors to the public.
And to understand why Apple sometimes pushes that July date back, we can look at some historical insight. When Apple delayed the public beta last year, Bloomberg's Mark Gurman pointed this out, saying, "Given that iOS 26 is such a significant design overhaul, it makes sense that Apple would want to take a little extra time to get things right." This perfectly explains Apple's flexible July timeline. If iOS 27 ends up bringing massive foundational changes or huge design overhauls, Apple will absolutely hold back the public beta until late July just to guarantee a baseline level of stability. Whatever the case is this year, mid to late July is definitely your safest bet.
And finally, Section 4, the climax and resolution coming in September 2026. So, early in September, we hit a really critical milestone known as the release candidate. What does that mean? The release candidate is the absolute final beta version of the software before it becomes generally available to the public. For all intents and purposes, this is the finished product. Apple strategically releases this just a few days before their massive September hardware event, basically as a final dress rehearsal to ensure there are no catastrophic, last-minute bugs before millions of people hit install.
So here is how all of these pieces finally come together in this tightly choreographed sequence. Step 1, that release candidate drops in early September. Step 2, just a few days later, Apple holds their huge event to announce the new hardware, which this year is expected to include the highly anticipated iPhone 18 Pro and Pro Max. Step 3, the iOS 27 general release drops. Historically, this lands about 3 to 5 days before the new iPhones hit store shelves. Based on Forbes analysis, that puts the iOS 27 release date right around Monday, September 14th. And then finally, Step 4, the new iPhone 18 hardware officially goes on sale, likely on Friday, September 18th, shipping with iOS 27 right out of the box.
And there you have it. That is the complete, multi-month roadmap for iOS 27. Straight from the WWDC reveal in June, all the way to the final hardware launch in September. We've seen exactly how developers get that early buggy access, how the public can roll the dice in mid to late July, and how it all culminates in that polished general release. So the only question left for you is to evaluate your own risk tolerance. Are you going to be a test pilot and brave the summer betas? Or are you going to play it safe and hold out for September's polished release?